can post that on the webpage and folks can refer back to it as needed. Next slide. Okay, so I just wanted to start with some key terminology, just noting, we all want to be speaking precisely and accurately and really understanding where we're all coming from, and so that we can be specific about what we're trying to address, our objectives, and how we're going to do that. So I just pulled out a couple of definitions from our opening order for this docket that I thought were particularly relevant to our conversation. First is energy equity. This refers to the goal of achieving equity in both the social and economic participation in the energy system, while also remediating social, economic, and health burdens on those historically harmed by the energy system. So past looking as well. Another key term is vulnerable populations. That's folks we might be hoping to help through this proceeding. Vulnerable populations are those who are economically disadvantaged, certain racial and ethnic minorities, like Native Hawaiians, elderly residents, rural residents, those with inadequate access to education, and those with other socioeconomic challenges. Another term that you'll hear a lot, or we might use a lot, is energy burden. This is the percentage of a household's income spent to cover their energy costs. And at the bottom here, I just note that we are aware that these are draft definitions. This is a starting place for us. I think we're hopeful to align our definitions and terminology with work that's going on in the Equity Hui, which is a group that's been meeting regularly to discuss these types of issues. But if there are other inputs on these definitions as well, that's welcome. Go to the next slide. A couple of tenets that we'll think about in our proceeding as we go forward are distributive equity, procedural equity, recognition justice, and intergenerational justice. These are sort of different lenses or facets of equity that we might look at. So distributive equity refers to sort of how the benefits and harms of the system are distributed across segments of a community. And often you'd like to prioritize those with the highest need in recognizing that harms and benefits are not and have not been historically distributed equally. Procedural equity, which is a big one we'll think about in our proceeding, is the inclusive, accessible, and authentic engagement and representation in the process and development of implementing energy or sustainability programs and policies. So making sure that we have the voices in the room and that we're hearing them and listening actively. Recognition justice is along that same line, identifying who's being ignored in decision-making or who has been historically ignored in decision-making, and how that should be remedied so that all individuals are fairly represented and offer equal political rights. And finally, intergenerational justice looks at how we can ensure that our decisions are going to be beneficial for future generations, and may also look at past harms and how we can ensure that our decisions will increase rather than limit the development options of future generations. Next slide. So we know that there are many challenges to energy equity in Hawaii, and we want to hear from you on what those are. But as a starting place, I think these are some of those that are most forefront for the commission that we are aiming to address or look at in this proceeding. We know that our energy rates are the highest in the country and very high, and can lead to unaffordable utility bills or the need for utility payment assistance. We know that there is a high energy burden, meaning folks are spending a lot of their income towards their energy bills. And again, that creates a need for payment assistance and help. And I think these have all been exacerbated throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Another one is unequal access to renewable energy and lack of, historic siting of fossil fuel infrastructure or other energy infrastructure. We know that our energy infrastructure has often been centered in certain communities. Land constraints are a big one here in Hawaii. How are we going to get to our 100% renewable energy goal? And where are we going to site our infrastructure when we know we have a need for housing as well, and agriculture, and competing land uses. Another one would be our regulatory process burdens. We know it can be challenging to participate in our proceedings and have your voice heard. So that's something we might address. And then we want to hear from you. What are the other challenges that are on your mind, and what else might we address on this? Next slide. So as we were thinking about how do we address these many diverse and complex issues, we sort of started to brainstorm some tools in our toolkit. And we were thinking about sort of how can we bucket them so that we can address them in a more manageable way. And we identified sort of 4 categories that we might think about and work towards in this proceeding. The first is energy affordability and measures like financial assistance that might directly impact the amount that somebody is paying towards a utility bill. There's a lot to draw from our own experiences in Hawaii on these types of approaches, as well as across the United States and other areas. We might look at rate discounts, rates that specifically benefit specific customers like low-income customers or retired senior citizens. We might try to expand state and federal utility payment assistance programs or other bill assistance and payment programs, maybe expand those or look at ways we could modify them to make them more effective. There's a lot of ways we could go in this pathway. Next slide. The second bucket we identified was equitable access to clean energy. And I think there's a lot to consider in this bucket, but the tools here recognize that certain populations have been overburdened with energy infrastructure or left out of the clean energy transition so far. So some of the ways we might look at to address this bucket is, how are we distributing the benefits from our customer energy resource programs? That might be rooftop solar and storage, our community-based or shared solar programs. That might be energy efficiency and demand response programs, time-varying rates, transportation electrification as well. Another area we might look at in this bucket is community engagement. Do communities feel like they have adequate input into system planning? Can we expand or improve community benefits agreements? Or could we provide specific benefits to communities that act as hosts to infrastructure? Another way we might look at this is expanded or enhanced financing programs, maybe through loans, low interest loans, or on-bill payment programs for folks to have better access to renewable energy initiatives. But I'm sure there's many more as well. Next slide. The third bucket we identified was utility business model reforms. And this may be a bit confusing if you're not familiar with the utility business model, but I think simply put, this pathway might look at ways that we can align our utilities incentives and the way that they do business with the outcomes we're trying to achieve in this proceeding. So some of the ways we might think about addressing this would be to implement an incentive, like a financial incentive for the utility if they're able to achieve the outcomes that we want to achieve in this proceeding. We might develop a specific fund that can go to assist low and moderate income customers. We might improve the reporting and transparency, collect additional data on key metrics, or just put the information out there so it's out in the open. We could also pursue innovative pilot projects, or we might even look at universal basic kilowatt hour programs. There's a lot to consider here, and I think there's a lot to balance as well in terms of ensuring the utility can sufficiently do its job with supporting the customers we're trying to help here as well. Into the next slide. Finally, our fourth pathway is procedural equity improvements. These tools aim to build equity and justice principles into the way that we do our work here at the Commission and across the utilities functions as well. I think this one's exciting to me because it will help us ensure that we're addressing our issues systematically and ensuring longevity of the lessons that we learn here and that we've learned in the past as well. Some ways we might look at this would be to streamline and simplify ways that customers can enroll or qualify for programs. This might be more streamlined or effective community outreach. I do hope that we'll make our proceedings at the commission more accessible and potentially develop an action plan for us as well internally here at the PUC. Next slide. So I think that's all I had. I just wanted to note that, these pathways, as Mike noted, are not the only ones. The tools that we've identified are definitely not the only ones. And we want to hear from you today and throughout the proceeding on what we've missed and what you think we can do better. So yeah, I think that I am going to turn it back over to Sarah. Is that right?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Grace. Yeah. So right now we'd love to use this space to ask both online and in-person participants if they have any questions or clarifying questions about what Grace just went through. Just as a reminder, we're going to have an opportunity after the break to really dig in more on the pathways for this proceeding. So we have lots of space to have more in-depth conversation, but right now just creating some room to ask any clarifying questions.
Just a reminder to introduce yourself as you're speaking.
Hi again, this is Kylie Wager-Cruz, Earth Justice. I was wondering, since this docket appears so vast in its scopes and things we might be looking at and considering, what the PUC sees as possible outcomes or deliverables at the end of this proceeding.
So you've guessed what the next couple of slides are going to be, but yes, we're going to talk about that. We want to make that clear, but also balance that we're at the beginning and there could be really good ideas in this room and online that we haven't thought of. But we'll at least give you some sample outcomes that we hope to achieve. And they'll be in color on slides shortly.
I'm Tyler from Equitable Utility Solutions. I'm curious how currently active dockets, specifically 2019-323, the DER study, is going to be involved in this discussion, as the two will be highly related.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we understand that there are a lot of interrelated issues going on here with the DER proceeding, the performance-based regulation proceeding, Hawaii gas proceedings, all across our work here at the commission. I think that, we'll want to, as much as we can, sort of identify issues that are clearly being identified other places and address them there, and then see what we can do to maybe address like policies or practices that we could use at the commission to improve our decision making in other dockets as well. But if there's a DER program that's not being addressed there that we want to take up here, I think that's welcome and something we could consider as well.
Add that I hope this docket, in addition to having some real substantive outcomes, can serve as a coordinator for some of the other efforts that are happening in our other dockets, where we have individually tried to address a smaller facet of one of these equity issues. Hopefully in this docket, we can coordinate those efforts a little bit better. Other questions here in the room?
Sorry, hi, Dean Nishino with the Division of Consumer Advocacy. I guess maybe two questions. One is, again, given the scope of the docket, I can see where maybe the proceeding might take a while to kind of go through everything. I guess, has it been contemplated whether or not there might be an effort to streamline efforts to possibly deliver benefits to customers for certain things that are identified as issues already on a shorter time frame, such as, vulnerable customers, helping them with bill and whatnot? Because again, I think nobody will disagree with the high rates, the high energy burden. So that's one question. And I guess the second is, it seems like a lot of the pathways are addressing equity issues that have already been identified. Is it fair to assume that maybe pathway 4 would be something where there's like a continual process to identify additional equity issues that may need to be addressed on a going forward basis, rather than just assuming we've identified the entire population of issues up front.
To your second question, yes, absolutely. We want help identifying additional equity issues that we haven't, both right now today, but throughout the course of this proceeding. My only thought is some of those might actually warrant their own separate pathway and not necessarily fit within number 4, which is procedural equity. And for your first question on how we're prioritizing, I think the answer is yes, that there should be some actions we can identify that come out sooner, earlier in this proceeding, and others may take longer. We've definitely thought about that possibility. We haven't made decisions yet about which will be priorities. We're hoping to lean on all of you for that discussion.
I have a question. Every year, PUC gives a, I don't know if you can hear me or not, rate increase. In that rate increase includes infrastructure improvements. And every year they get an increase in infrastructure improvements. Yet here we are paying the electric rates we have based on a, mostly at this point, a fuel surcharge. Now, how much are we paying for that fuel that we weren't paying before? The price of gasoline has come down, the price of oil has come down, yet we're still paying a premium price based on the PUCOK of that particular rate. That should be an adjustable. I have more, but that for now, it's good.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, we absolutely recognize that high rates are a challenge for folks, and that's something we want to look at here. And I think there are ways we could think about trying to look at the mechanisms that influence our rates, like fuel cost pass-throughs, or the mechanisms that do that. And I would encourage you to bring your ideas to that pathway for sure. Okay, I'm gonna go to Tyler and then we'll come back to you. Okay.
I'll be quick. Ryan Hurley on behalf of Kahuku Community Association. Kind of going off of Dean's question, I would just note it. I think we're in the middle of ongoing RFPs. I would hope that some stuff that we can learn in this docket that would be, and I'm not really following those dockets very closely, but I hope that we can implement some things that we would learn in this docket in those ongoing dockets, because we have a significant amount of energy that we'll be procuring. And I hope that we can, it just seems like a waste to go procure however many thousands of megawatts or whatever without incorporating this that we all acknowledge is critically important. So I hope we can do that. I guess, will that be possible, or are you guys thinking, or is this going to be after that? Would this be applied to future RFPs or future project acquisition?
I think our hope is to identify actions we can take quickly and take them, and also take some of these things will take more time, and to take the time we need for those actions, but hopefully not have that slow down some of the things that we can implement quickly in ongoing proceedings. That's what we'd like to do.
Clint Churchill with the Practical Policy Institute. My question is, will there be a possibility for this proceeding to provide feedback or information to the legislature? But the angle of my question is, legislature has passed 100% renewable. PUC has to follow that. HECO has to follow the PUC. So if there's something about 100% renewable that's not practical, and that comes out of this equity discussion, will there be feedback or influence back to the legislature that there perhaps needs to be a tweaking of that law?
I can say generally, we absolutely contemplated the idea of giving feedback to the ledge from this proceeding, starting with the report that actually the legislature required us to do, and we submitted back in December. But I think one of the possible outcomes, I don't know yet, but one of the possible outcomes could be recommended legislation. And if that was what these groups decided, then that's what we would do. We would recommend legislation to the ledge. So definitely possible, but that has not been decided yet.
Kind of, I live in Hawaii, okay? I have 30 panels on my house. So I'm talking with some experience, a little bit of experience here, as far as a personal standpoint and possibly more. You know, Hawaiian Electric has been allowed with the NIM system to, it's like 3-1, I think. So they're pushing solar. Get more solar, get more solar. Where's the incentive when you got to produce 3 kilowatts of power to get 1? Okay, and then you got that 3 kilowatts an hour that you're getting charged for is got, again, this fuel surcharge. And I question the fuel surcharge more than anything. I mean, I've had all of a sudden in April of last year, my supposed usage went down. What I'm giving them, and I have a 1-to-1 unit, so I'm lucky, went down 100 kilowatt hours or whatever, 100 units. Okay. I'm looking at my production from my Enphase system and whatever, and I'm going, where are they coming up with this number? Again, it goes back to something's wrong. It's either the system. I'm talking out of turn here, but the PUC needs to start stepping up and making Hawaiian Electric give back what they have been taking for so long.
Yeah, thank you for that. You're welcome to, I encourage you to bring that passion, those ideas into our next discussions. Great, we welcome it. Just a reminder, right now we're doing questions and we're gonna have lots of opportunity for discussion in the next section as well. So just looking for sort of clarifying questions about the presentations or what's happening going forward.
Yeah, mine is a super basic one, but I really appreciate in the first meeting, Lorna Sierra Club, you guys went through I think it was the 4 levels of participation for community. And I thought that was really good because I think because we are recording this and like, I just want to make sure, I guess for myself as an intervener, but also community, like how things go on official records so that they can be like reviewed again. So like if in these breakout rooms, if people make a comment, should they also go to the website to make it official record, just to ensure you guys can account for everything? I'm just clarifying, so everybody's like clear on that.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that. We'll definitely be taking feedback that we get from the breakout rooms today, but this docket is open at as all commission dockets are, for public comments at any time. If anyone wants to put something specifically in the record in this docket, all you need to do is email puc.comments@hawaii.gov. Please reference this docket number, which is 2022-0250, and then say your piece at any time you feel. There will be other times that we may reach out for specific feedback on a specific issue. So there'll be time to do more of that. But yes, anytime, please send us public comments. That'll go in the record, but we will also be recording what happens in the breakout rooms and trying to use all of the good feedback that we get.
Just to add to that quickly too, if folks were not able to attend the first meeting or want to go back and refer to Mike's presentation on how you can participate, that is posted to our webpage. So you're welcome to go back and reference that anytime. And we're also taking notes from these meetings. So we'll aim to capture questions and post those to the docket or to the webpage. If you don't see your question or comment listed there, you can always file a comment, as Mike noted. I think we're trying to figure out other ways as well to solicit input. So we'll work on that too.
Grace and Mike, we have a question here online.
Great.
Henry, go ahead and unmute and you can ask your question.
This is a combined question comments. Molokai has done a fantastic job over the last few years understanding energy policies. Part of what they're doing is it takes time for newbies to to learn about the energy system, and also to get a set of definitions to understand how definitions are used in utility matters that are different than how the public uses them. And I would hope that this docket has a time where those two things can be developed.
For that, Henry, that's similar to some feedback we heard at the first meeting. So it's definitely on our minds how to better do some outreach, do some education about the basics to really help people be able to bring their best to this proceeding.
Yeah, John Borland from IEEE Hawaii. This also addresses this gentleman's question. So I've been a residential user of solar plus storage. And in fact, I waited for storage because I didn't want to give HECO any more money. Because you're giving HECO money, they basically are paying the big oil companies. So with storage, I was able to basically go off grid for 2.5 months during the summertime. Now, therefore, there's a lot of things you need to learn, best practices to do that. And so I first, again, have been looking at energy equity for the last 7 years. And I first started out as a person saying, okay, if I'm self-supplied, not NEMS, how can I be equal to the NEMS people? So I actually trademarked and coined the word NEMS equivalent savings. So I wanted to achieve the $25 a month from HECO. Well, over the last 5 years, I actually ended up paying $31 a month because I'm self-sufficient, so it's not perfect. But then I started thinking, only a third of the residents in Hawaii have solar or renewables. The 2/3 don't, because again, it's because they can't afford the $30,000 the cost of a system. And so I started to look to see, how do I make energy equitable to the underserved market? And so that's why, I wrote those papers on how to do that. And so the bottom line is, to be energy equitable, everybody should only pay HECO $25, and that can be done. But if you're an apartment owner, it may get down to maybe $60, but that's still better than $150. So that's why I like to see the PUC look at, how do you bring energy equitable to every single residence in Hawaii, no matter what their social economic background. Again, how do you get $25 NEMS equivalent savings? And again, it can be done, but it needs to have rebates for the low income instead of tax credits, because they're not paying taxes. Give them the cash rebate so they can afford, 65, in fact, 75% off if you buy an American brand with the new IRA policy. And that's a huge savings. And also to focus on, it's not just reducing your HECO to $25, it's making the return on investment less than 3 years. And in fact, with the new high rates of HECO, the return on investment is actually down to maybe 2.1 years. And so what it means is to look to see how to get an economical system, not pay 2x the price for a battery. You can get, again, good prices, but people can achieve $25 a month and 2.5 years return on investment. And that's what I'd like to see the PUC create a docket to help everybody from all aspects to achieve energy equity.
Sarah, do we have questions online? I think maybe we'll take one or two more.
I'm not seeing anything here online. Oh, yes, we do. Amy, please go ahead and unmute.
Hi, thank you guys so much for pulling this together, and I'm really looking forward to being a participant in this process going forward. I just had a question about whether there are thoughts on how the pathways reflect the Native Hawaiian population. So I noticed that in the beginning of the meeting, you called out the Native Hawaiian population specifically as a subset of the disadvantaged communities that you would like to be benefited through this process and potential pathways. But I'm not seeing anything specific in the pathways to that speak to Native Hawaiian populations. And I know this is a complicated legal matter, but I'm just curious if you could speak to sort of how you're thinking about that, given some of the legal constraints that exist. And I'll leave it at that.
Question. It's a great question. And we definitely do not have all the answers at this moment. But I think some of the ways that I personally am thinking about that would be to develop ways we can assess the impacts of our decision making and programs that we may develop on different populations and folks like Native Hawaiians. So thinking about that, if there's something specific we want to consider in order to benefit Native Hawaiians, I think that's a great idea as well. Lots of ideas to consider. We definitely don't have all the answers, and so excited to hear what you have to offer as well.
So this is more of a comment than a question. I think this is Brendan Bailey for Hawaiian Electric, Vice President of Customer Service. And I'd be happy to talk to you about your system after this. If we can talk offline, I'd be happy to help you. And I think the PUC has some definite ideas in mind is with respect to potential outcomes, but we're looking for, at Hawaiian Electric, we were really excited when this docket was open. We'd always been looking at, for the past couple of years, energy equity and that lens, with respect to our policies, our programs, our initiatives. So we're really looking, to the future where there's a potential for a framework to, how we could all look at energy equity through that lens and overlay it over all of our different dockets and really, have the same understanding about how we should look at these very, difficult issues as we move forward. So more a comment than anything else. Thanks.
Other questions online? We're coming right up on a break, but I want to make sure that our online folks have equal opportunity to the folks in the room.
I am not seeing any hands or questions in the chat.
I just had a thought. The people that are on the NEM system that are on not one-to-one, maybe they should get a credit on the fuel surcharge because they're giving more than they're receiving. So maybe the fuel surcharge would be reduced for them.
Thanks everybody for all of this good discussion. I think this helps set us up really well for our breakout rooms. But before we do that, I want to give everyone a chance to take a quick break, have a snack, use the restroom. The restroom codes are on the door there if you need. The restrooms are physically downstairs, but the codes are on the door. Snacks are over by the far wall. And I think we're right now at 10:54. Yeah, so if you could come back at 11:04. Okay, I think most folks are getting settled in back to their seats, so maybe we'll start it back up. So I think, Sarah, if you could just put the slides up, get the slides up on the screen. And so as promised, we'll be offering kind of a sample of what this could look like. But again, please bear in mind, this is not set in stone. This is preliminary. We really do want your feedback. So next slide, please. So what you're looking at is the 4 pathways that Grace discussed: energy affordability in red, equitable access in green, utility business model in yellow, and procedural equity in blue. And so we've divided these up both to look at timing and possible activities, and in some cases, some outcomes from each of these 4 pathways. And again, preliminary, we're very open to change, but we thought some structure would be helpful to react to. So for example, I'm not going to read through all of these, but these will be posted to the website, puc.hawaii.gov/energy/equity, and that should be up on the slides later. But for affordability and direct assistance, we're thinking this is going to be most active in the first year of this proceeding, and I think potentially one of the first to have an outcome from this proceeding. Some of these activities are going to include community education on existing programs, more meetings and formal workshops, and hopefully development of some sort of affordability pilot rate or program that's obviously an oversimplified thing of something that could get complicated, but that's the goal, and we think we might be able to do that in a year's time. Some of the other ones are a little bit less definite, but for example, I'll just do equitable access to clean energy. This could take a long time, but there's some things that are already happening. CBRE is one example of that, but there are other things that could happen. So we want to make sure that we give this the time it needs to try and get it right. But some potential outputs could include, again, workshops, requests for information, but possibly in the DER docket, development of specific programs for low-income customers. So next slide, please. Maybe this will help illustrate a little bit. Again, this is a sample of a timeline, and we're just looking across the top quarters of years. We're still barely, I think, in Q1 of 2023. But so we think maybe we could complete the affordability work first, but all of these processes we intend to have them occur in parallel, so that we're not waiting for one before we start the other, and there will be opportunities to be involved in all of these pathways potentially at the same time. So there could be moments that are busy. I'll just say that gap in the utility business model reform, that's intentional, and that what that should reflect is the work that's going on right now in another proceeding, the PBR proceeding, or performance-based regulation proceeding. We hope that we'll get some feedback from that proceeding into this proceeding. So that's what that gap is, to let the PBR folks do their work and then essentially report to this docket so that we can continue at least the equity piece here. So that's, again, this is a sample. We are open to feedback here. If there's another pathway that we missed, we would need to add it, obviously, but we, again, wanted to give some structure, some notion of how we think this might go. Next slide, please. So I think we've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. This is a broad and challenging topic. Some things will go more quickly, some things will take more time, and we want to give the time that we need to do it right. So we may move at a measured pace, and also we want to understand how your availability affects us, and we don't want to burden everyone who's already kindly shown up to give their energy and thoughts here with 1,000 meetings all at the same time. We want to move at a pace that works for everyone. But really, we want to balance that action with making informed decisions, and we're open to feedback as in whatever form that you can give it. It's important to us to hear from you. And not just on the form, but on the content. So topics we're missing, phasing should be different. You think some issues belong in a different pathway? Fine, please tell us. We want to know. We want to adjust. And next slide, I think, is for if there are any questions before we go into our breakout room. And again, please just, if you can, focus on clarifying questions, because we're going to have lots of good time for discussion in the breakout room. So any clarifying questions?
I have a question.
Go for
Please
it.
go ahead, Amy.
Are the pathways already defined, or is there space for additional pathways at this point?
There's definitely space for additional pathways. We offered the 4 as a starting point to give some structure to this discussion. But if something's missing, we want to know.
Okay, thank you.
I'm wondering, this is Kylie Wager-Cruz from Earth Justice again. I'm wondering if after the PUC decides on a process going forward, if there will be some sort of order or way it's communicated of like what the schedule is, what topics are going to be covered, so that people can plan ahead to attend where they have the ability to provide the best input.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's going to be in the form of an order, in the form of a letter to everybody who's attended this. If it's also, it's probably also going to go up on our webpage. It may take a few different forms, but yes, that's the idea. It may take the form of a staff report, but the goal is to once we've had these breakout discussions, is to really reflect on what we've heard and try and do a better job of defining this proceeding, both in terms of content and timing.
Hi, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
This is Sunny from Kahuku Community Association. Is equitable distribution something that you folks are considering in this process? Because one thing that comes to mind is unfair burdens on specific communities. Like, how do we make sure that other communities are also stepping up to the plate and bearing their burdens as well, instead of having one or two or a few handful of communities bearing the burdens of all these renewable energy projects and things like that.
Thanks, Henny. That's definitely on our minds, both the historical distribution of energy infrastructure and the future distribution of it. Very much something we're thinking about in this docket.
Okay, thank you.
Other clarifying questions before we go into our breakout rooms? Not hearing any in the room. Are there any more online, Sarah?
No, we look like we don't have any more hands raised or questions in the chat.
Okay, then maybe we put up the last slide on the breakout rooms to hopefully identify for everybody where they want to go and what we're going to do when they get there.
Great, thanks, Mike. I can also just give a little bit of an overview so we can orient ourselves for this hybrid experience. So we're going to transition now to this facilitated discussion, as Mike said, to get your feedback on these proposed 4 pathways. So for this discussion, we're going to have 2 rounds of 15-minute breakout conversation, and each round is going to have these same 4 breakouts available, both for in-person and virtual participants. So please self-select into whichever topic is of most interest to you, and you are going to have the opportunity to be in 2 of the 4 pathways today. And just a reminder, as has already been said many times, this is just the beginning, so there's lots more opportunity to provide feedback on all of these pathways, as well as the ones that may not appear here. And so once we open the rooms, what you can do is navigate, if you are on our virtual room, to the More tab that's at the bottom right hand of the Zoom window, and you can select breakout rooms and then choose whichever topic you would like to join. So again, self-select into whatever is of most interest. Folks in the room will help those folks break up into the right areas as well. And with that, Karina, I think we can go ahead and open our breakout rooms. We'll come back after 15 minutes and then we'll switch and choose different rooms. So if you have any issues, please just let us know.
And for folks in the room, group 1 is going to be here. This is affordability. Group 2, equitable access on the far side of the U. Group 3 in the back left, sort of closer to the front door, that's utility business model reform. And group 4, procedural equity, over where Anand is standing. So if you please go to your top one now and then your second one in about 15 minutes, and we'll have a discussion.
Great. And Mike mentioned there are PDFs in the room, and we'll drop one virtually as well for reference on these 4 pathways. See you all in the rooms.
Yep, just wanted to thank everybody for their participation in the breakout rooms. I want to note that this is a start of this conversation. We have many next steps coming our way, but today, if you did not get an opportunity to express your thought, if you're online, you can put that in the chat and we will record that down. If you're here in the room, you can put it on our bike rack or grab one of the sticky notes that are around the room and place it on the bike rack as well. And we'll take those down for future reference as well. Sarah, do we have next step slides?
Yes, we'll pull those up.
Okay, so what are we going to do from here? So first of all, we're going to take the feedback that we heard today, and we're going to try to come up with a final proceeding work plan that will be written down and posted. There may also be an interim step where we solicit further input, but we'll let you all know what the next steps are. And as noted, you are welcome to file a comment for us anytime, but we will also be soliciting input on more specific items so that you have something very tangible to react to. I do want to note this again, we want to take a measured pace on this docket. So we are going to be very thoughtful in how we design this proceeding. So it may take us a little bit to get that final work plan out because we want to make sure it's thorough, it's specific, and that you all have something to react to that's ready to go. So we appreciate your patience on that, but know that it is because we want to be thoughtful and make sure that this is effective for you all as well. So again, we will be in touch with next steps. You can actually sign up for email updates for this docket. That's separate from being notified that something has been filed in this docket, which you can also do. The process for signing up for docket notifications is was listed in Mike's presentation, which is up on our equity webpage. And that webpage also has a link to sign up for email updates. So I encourage you all to go to that webpage and sign up for the email notifications. In the meantime, please feel free to file a public comment in the docket if needed. And yeah, I guess I just want to express gratitude again for all of you bringing your ideas to the table. I'm really excited and energized about what we can do here. And I want to, thank you all very much. Is there anything anybody wants to add before we close today?
No, I think we're good here online.
Laurie Buchanan, I just saying we ran out of time, and maybe we wasted too much time in the beginning, and we should have done this. Breakout session didn't work too good for me. It's important for me because I flew over in treacherous weather to be here at great expense. So the rest I'm gonna put on top of my board. But what I really wanted to do is I really wanted to thank the PUC. I really did. I so appreciate it. You guys are doing this now, and I'm still alive to see it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much and appreciate that feedback. And we're so glad to have you here and hope that we can bring these meetings to Molokai as well. I will note that reminds me that we will have a poll up for your feedback. So give us your feedback on how this meeting went. We're still working on the hybrid format. We want to know what went well for you, what didn't, and then we can adjust going forward. So Sarah, if you could put the slide up with the poll, we'll get that going. And I believe some of our staff too will stick around if you'd like to talk story or just chat with us as well. We'll be around for that.
And just in case folks are trying to read the poll address, we got some feedback that some of the numbers might be hard to read. So that is pollev.com/RMI 601. So I know
Can you drop that link onto the chat so we can just open it up directly?
Yes, we will. Thank you.
601. Yes. Okay, with that, I think we'll close for today. We look forward to hearing from you in many future sessions and hope you'll have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.